the good girl you always have to be. Conceal, don't feel, don't let them know. Well, now they know. Let it go, let it go. Can't hold it back anymore.
So hey guys, you just heard a part of one of these songs from the not recent, but film from last year's Disney film called Frozen. A lot of you are probably really familiar with this film. It was one of the highest grossing films of last year, I believe. And since then, it's won Best Original Song at the Oscars, and it's got a lot of recognition. In fact, I think it's already in the process of being adapted for a Broadway play, even by Disney. So it's been pretty widely successful since its release in November of 2013. But strangely enough, I actually just got around to finally seeing this film ever. Um, I've kind of ignored it this whole time and things like that. Other films have came out, and I think even around the time this film came out, there were some other ones that I wanted to see instead of this one. So several reasons as to why it took me as long as it did to actually get around to seeing this movie. But in Frozen, you guys, it's basically centering around two sisters. One of them, it basically gets hurt at a young age, and it's due to her sister's hidden abilities of being able to freeze things. And so, as consequence, they have to take away certain memories from her and things of that nature. And they try to keep the freezing powers from this girl a secret from the kingdom and a secret from the family as much as they can, specifically with the girl that they have to erase the memories from. And so, growing up, people are always kind of curious as to why she's locking herself away in this room in the castle. And, she doesn't really like to touch things for obvious reasons because obviously they'll freeze. And so basically, the truth eventually comes out through a series of accidents. And the kingdom that these people live in end up getting frozen. Her powers kind of get out of control. People think that she's kind of using sorcery to kind of get her way in the kingdom. So basically, because she's the person responsible for freezing the kingdom, and she kind of leaves the scene for doing this. Basically, they have to track her down and see what they can do to potentially thaw the kingdom. And if she can't do it, they also have to find ways to track down other people who would know as to how to get rid of this frozen kingdom and make things the way they were again. And without getting into too much spoiler detail, there's a curse that happens later on with another character in the film, and they have to figure out how to remove that curse in some way as well. So, tons of things going on with this film, and like the title suggests, a lot of things get frozen in this movie. So Frozen, you guys, I really appreciate Disney's effort of making like another Disney Renaissance effort movie, like something along the line of Aladdin or Lion King or Cinderella or I know Cinderella was probably way before the Renaissance era for Disney, but something along that line where like Pocahontas and things that came out in like the late '80s, early '90s for Disney. There are 2D animated films that basically have made the studio successful as they were. And they're still successful, but the Renaissance era for them was a very huge decade of film for that company. So appreciated the effort. Unfortunately, I didn't think Frozen is as high quality as some of those other films, though the 3D animation is very slick and smooth and it works very well in film. It just never quite feels as accomplished as some of those other earlier films. So, for the positives and negatives of Frozen, you guys, I think the best thing I can say about Frozen is the character of Olaf and the energy that the character of Olaf brings to the movie is really quite good. Olaf is definitely one of the definitely one of the better parts of the movie. I would say. I think I would go that far. His humor, just what he brings to the movie, brings a sense of energy that characters like Timon and Pumbaa did in Lion King, or kind of like the little raccoon or the hummingbird from Pocahontas, or like the genie from Aladdin. Very successfully done by the late Robin Williams and. Characters of that nature. I definitely got that impression with Olaf that he was definitely the most nostalgia grabbing character in the whole movie for me. Just, it definitely felt like classic Disney whenever he was doing something really fun on the screen. So, huge thumbs up to the Olaf character. I love the character. Kristen Bell has a voice role in this film, and she does a terrific job. She voices one of the sisters in this. You could definitely sense her presence in the movie. I mean, her voice is very recognizable. I caught it right away when the film started, and just she has a very good screen presence, even if it's not her physically being there. Her voice presence alone is very dominant in this movie. So, very good work for Kristen Bell. She definitely stole the screen in certain moments. I think her voice performance in this was really very good. I also like how the film intentionally ignores like the obvious play out of certain things. Like the true love's first kiss will do this, and if this happens, then obviously the happily ever after thing's going to happen. Then shortly after that other thing happens. I like how the film intentionally ignores doing those really obvious things that we're very familiar with in other movies. I can't give away one of them because it'd be a huge spoiler in the movie for those who haven't seen the movie yet. Um, but I like how it really attempts to ignore those big cliche kind of moments, but that also kind of bites in the butt later on. So I'll explain that when I get to my negatives. I think another big thing I can say about Frozen, if you have young girls, if you're the parent of, let's say, a daughter who's between the ages of 4 and 12, they're gonna love this movie. It's princesses. It's pretty to look at. Uh, you know, the songs are very easy to learn for those who really want to sing these songs with these characters as they're watching the film and things like that. So if you have a daughter between the age of 4 and 12, they're gonna love this film. If you saw this film in the theater, I'm sure they did nothing but talk about this film after seeing it. I can definitely see the young girl demographic that the film is targeting towards. And I also that kind of goes up my next point. I think the animation and the visuals in this film are very nice and smooth. They are very neat to look at, but unfortunately, because clearly Disney spent so much time with these visuals, certain areas of the script were kind of lacking in other departments. So I'll get to that here in just a second with my negatives. For the negatives of Frozen, I really don't think. I know the music is a very successful aspect of this film. I know the soundtrack's probably sold millions of copies by now. But for me personally, I think this overall story would work better as something that wasn't a musical. I think the musical aspect of the film was very on and off, and I think the story itself would just function better if it wasn't a musical. I think I would be able to get into it more, and the musical part of this film just felt really unnecessary to me. The first half of the film is also really boring. It's a very slow first half of the movie. I think it's not until the Olaf character comes in where you really get the classic nostalgia Disney feeling in this movie. Once again, Olaf really steals the show in this movie, and it's not until his character shows up until things start to really get interesting. Um, I think also the other problem with Frozen is it's very predictable. It's definitely, though Disney tries to avoid the usual cliches, if this happens, this thing's going to happen kind of thing. But there's just a lot of plot points that are very predictable. You know exactly where it's going to go. You know exactly what the situation is going to play out as. If you've seen other films like this before, there's a lot of scenes here just like, oh, well, this is going to happen next, and it does. It's one of those kind of films. There's also several rule inconsistencies. I think the best one I can give away without doing too many spoilers is the ice princess. The girl who can freeze things. At one point in the movie, anything she touches freezes. Basically, she's kind of like King Midas. And then obviously all the bad stuff happens. And then by the time the movie's over with, she still has her powers and things like that. Um, but the weird thing is like towards the end of the film, like anything she touches doesn't freeze. So it's just like, why all of a sudden is she King Midas, where everything she touches freezes, and now all of a sudden she's touching things all over the place, and none of them are freezing up? Is he more aware of her powers? Should she control them better? The film never has any consistent rules as far as when they're scared, things happen, or I mean, there's just no form of rules established for certain things like that. So it just felt really inconsistent to me as far as those things go. This film also reminds me that I really miss the 2D animation style that Disney once did, specifically during the Renaissance era where films like Lion King and Aladdin came out. I think Frozen personally would have benefited with a 2D animated style, kind of like what The Princess and the Frog did for those who remember that movie. I think if this film was done like The Princess and the Frog, whether that means, digital drawings are done or however they did that movie, I think that kind of look would have worked better for this movie. Frozen's very much in the spirit of like Wreck It Ralph and Chicken Little and Disney films that aren't really connected with Pixar, but they're 3D animated. And I don't know, the 3D animation just it felt like they were doing it just because that's the current popular media right now for animation. And I really think because Frozen's really trying to be hard to be that Disney Renaissance kind of film that we saw from the 90s, I think 2D animation would have really brought that nostalgia back for several people, including myself. So, unfortunately, they went with the traditional 3D route that's common in animation today, but I really think 2D animation would have really benefited for this movie. I also think there's too many generic Disney story elements. Um, if you've seen Pocahontas, if you've seen Lion King, if you've seen Cinderella, if you've seen Sleeping Beauty, if you've seen Little Mermaid, if you've seen Beauty and the Beast, you're gonna know every single story element of this movie. Basically, I mean, it's basically told exactly like those, with the exception of the few plot points where they try to play off the ignoring the cliches and things like that. But if you've seen any of those films, this film's going to feel extremely familiar. It's almost like you've seen it before the movie even started. Um, and that's a real downside to me. I would have much preferred a more original story from Disney once again. But overall, guys, I give Frozen a 7.5 out of 10. I think it has a lot of things going for it. Like I said, I'm clearly not the right demographic. I know this is clearly targeted toward young girls. But it being as successful as it is, I gotta say there's a lot of flaws behind the fame. And just a lot of things about Frozen that really can't make me give it a fresh rating of any kind. But 7.5 out of 10, I thought it was okay. Like I said, it does have a lot of things going for it, but there's enough flaws to really not make me say that it's good. And so, Frozen 7.5 out of 10 for me. I thought it was okay. Like I said, if you have young girls, if you're the mother or father of young girls, they're probably going to love it. But if you're like me, if you're in your 20s and you're, I don't know, too old for something like this, it might not be for you. But 7.5 out of 10 for me, it's okay.